Good evening and welcome back to another SundownSurmisings. My name is PJ. I'm here with Pastor Daniel Gregory. We're glad to see you.
Yeah.
We are on a holiday weekend.
Yeah.
It's the 4th. It's Labor Day, and we're so excited to celebrate Labor Day.
Yes.
And I think you got some plans.
Yes, my wife and I were going to be gone today, tomorrow, Sunday, kind of tooling our way back Sunday evening because we have Monday off.
Yeah.
And we're going to celebrate our anniversary, which isn't actually until September 11th. But we never get a chance to celebrate our anniversary because we're MBA and we're in school the whole time. Right?
Right, that's right. Well, what's interesting tonight is that we're in a global pandemic still,
Yes.
and many times, especially us with the schools and living in California, it seems like sometimes there's just chaos around us.
Yes.
And
it's never ending.
It's never ending. But tonight, you're taking us back because we've been journeying through the
Yes.
Old Testament and the stories,
Yeah.
and talking about God's foresight becomes hindsight for us. So give us a taste of where we're going and what we're going to do with this chaotic story.
It's a great story. It's one of my favorite ones to teach, especially if people haven't come across the Bible, because there's no story like this. It has intrigue. It's a modern day soap opera.
Okay.
You have intrigue, and you have palace, and you have quest for power and struggling them, and you have an orphan who's taken care of, but who races to become royalty and ends up saving people and heroes and villains and payback, and it's great, and it's one of the few female heroines in the Bible.
Well, I think what's interesting about this story is that we quote this. There's a line in this that through the generation has come that God has an appointed moment for each one of us, and that's going to come out of each night. Yes.
Yeah, we're going to look at that because sometimes I think, especially in the middle of a crisis, a pandemic that seems like it's going, like the chaos that's around us. Okay, God, what do you got? What's the plan? How do I even know that I'm going the right way, right? And something doesn't seem right, and then all of a sudden maybe some pieces all fall together.
Right.
Everything clicks, and we think, oh, that was just lucky. But in the future, we look back and we realize God's foresight was providential, and we only realize that through our own hindsight. Right? So let's look at a few passages. I want to kind of put the timeline because that's part of what makes this story really spark to me.
Well, as you taught this, and I think I've used this in Bible classes or youth group meetings, is the impact or the fact that there's a couple of things of trivia around this.
Yes. Okay, so. What's the one trivia question that people don't usually know, right? And that is, can you tell me a book in the Bible that never mentions God? And the answer is Esther.
It's Esther.
There's no mention of God, no Yahweh. It's not. We're not hiding it or covering it. It's not like in the Hebrew and they just didn't translate it. There's no Yahweh. There's no Elohim.
Right.
There's no El Shaddai. There's no nothing. And I always like to tell kids, there's no mention of God, but God's fingerprints are all over.
I love that. I love that picture.
It's like you can't read the book and go, oh, there's God.
Yeah.
God shows up. And sometimes I think that's a great comfort. We may not see God, we may not know what God's doing.
Correct.
And yet God's still there.
He's still there.
He's still there.
So you're going to take us back, and I just want to kind of set up the story a little bit. There's a party going on.
Yes. Major party.
So this land, they are celebrating all the wealth right now.
Yes. So it's obviously a time of peace.
Okay.
So as we're going to start, let's turn to the book of Esther, and we're going to start in chapter 1, verse 3. And it starts us. So Ahasuerus has come to the throne, and it looks like it must be a peaceful time because he's going to start a party that the Bible says at least 180 days, and it sounds like actually a full year.
Okay.
Because at 180 days he does something else, it sounds like, for another 6 months. So a 6-month party in any way, shape, or form. He's feeding everybody.
Right.
And so you can't do that if you're worried about enemies attacking you. So it's obviously a time of peace and prosperity. Everybody's feeling great. And let's pick up with Esther chapter 1, verse 3.
All right, here we go. In the 3rd year of his reign, he gave, that's the king, a banquet for all his princes and attendants, and the army officers of Persia and Media, the nobles and the princes of his province, being in his presence.
Yes.
So 3rd year.
Yeah, 3rd year.
Okay.
And it's after, it's just to kind of skip down. So verse 4 says, even 180 days, 180. And when these days were expired, the king then made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan the palace. So he took care of his servants, for his close ones for 180 days, and then he took care of the city for 180 days. So it's like a year-long party, and it's in 7 days into the second part of this party, where Vashti denies. He says, "Hey, I got the most beautiful wife. I want to show her off." Calls her, and she's like, "I'm not showing up to a bunch of drunken men." And he's mad. But that's in the 7th day. That's verse 10. And she says no, and he is not happy.
Well, in fact, I think his advisors want him to do something severe.
Yes, she deserves to die, and he's So he demotes her, but now he's kind of like, well, what do I do? Because it says he thinks about her. Says I kind of after these days, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was appeased, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what was decreed against her. Now he's like, well, I kind of need a queen. That's chapter 2, verse 1, and that'll take us to our next verse. In chapter 2, verse 16. So chapter 2, verse 16. A year to purify, to get themselves ready. I don't know how long it takes to take a bath. Apparently, a year long.
They're making it stick.
They're making it. It's gonna. And more than time has gone by. So chapter 2, verse 16.
So Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus to his royal palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign.
So in the 7th year of his reign. So 4 years have gone by, approximately, from the time Vashti said no to the time Esther, or Hadassah, becomes queen. So 4 years. That's actually, I always in my mind it was like, she was booted. The next day he's like,
got a new one.
Right?
Yeah.
And it didn't work that way. And so he had to wait. Now that's our theme in this book is actually kind of waiting and kind of waiting. So what happens next is you're thinking, okay, she becomes queen. Now we're into the story. Not quite. Chapter 3, verse 7 says,
in the first month, which is the first month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, that is the lot, was cast before Haman from day to day and from month to month, until the 12th month. That is the month of Adar.
And the reason I mention it doesn't sound like it connects the story, but that's the date stamp. And it's as that happens, that he walks by and Mordecai doesn't bow, and he's just fine. He's fed up. He's like, I got to get rid of this guy.
Yeah.
So 5 years. 5 years, right? From the 7th year to the 12th year, Esther's been queen. And now the plot begins to thicken. And I want to jump over our closing verse to get to the time thing, because I want to kind of live in the uncomfortable. So the decree goes out that in 12 months, anybody who's not a Jew can find a Jew, kill the Jew, take whatever the Jew has, take their property. And this must have just sent ripple shocks throughout the province, because this has never been done where you could just wholesale kill people.
Now this is before our generation, but in our generational history, we saw this. I mean, this happened for us, the Holocaust, in the 1930s and 40s.
Yep.
Okay. So this is happening way back in history.
This is a Holocaust of the same kind of thing. Again, taking the property. Okay. Now we did something similar, and my father-in-law's wife was Japanese American.
Okay.
They lost all their property.
They lost their property
here in America, and they lived in the camp on the other side of the Sierra Nevadas.
Okay.
And they were all lumped together. They were living. Her family was lumped together with strangers they'd never met before.
You know, we're living in a global pandemic. It's interesting how fear of something makes us do things that seem or that are irrational sometimes.
Yeah. And especially fear of something that transmutes to someone. Now, the final passage I want to draw to is the heart of this book, right? The heart of this book has these two famous lines, Mordecai's statement and then Esther's statement in response. But I want you to imagine, for 3 months, everybody was living in terror.
Yeah.
3 months. They had no idea. Like, okay, God, how are you going to do this? Maybe they decided, let's just leave. We just got to leave.
Yeah.
What they say this thing is pack up the family and go. After 3 months, what do? Maybe you have so much house and property, you're like, well, but I can't just leave all this. I can't. Yeah. You can't imagine just because you're like, well, how big is this empire? This empire is 127 satraps. We already read it goes from Ethiopia to. It's like, well, how far am I going to have to go where I won't be hunted?
Right.
Everywhere is open game. Everybody has seen it. Right, all the language. And so we're going to read 8, 9.
Here we go.
Here we go.
So the king's scribes were called at the time in the third month, that is the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day, and it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded to the Jews, the satraps, the governors, and the princes of the provinces, was extended from India to Ethiopia, 127, to every province according to its script, and to every people according to their language, as well as to the Jews according to their script and language.
Okay, so again, I'll have a timeline up here. So the decree goes out in the first month saying you can kill him. And the one we just read now is the counter decree that says, because he can't take, the laws are such of these people that he couldn't take one away, but it says this decree goes out and says, okay, you can defend yourself.
Yeah.
So when people come to attack you, you're allowed to band together and defend yourself. And in the middle of this passage, in the story, is this part where Haman has made his declaration, which we read back in chapter 3, verse 7. And Mordecai gets wind of it. He reads it, he knows what it means, and he is distraught. He is weeping, he's torn his clothes, he's wearing sackcloth and ashes, which would be, he couldn't go in front of royalty because that would be considered disgraceful.
Right.
But word is passed to Esther, hey, you know that Mordecai guy that you seem to pay attention to, he's looking distraught. She sends some clothes, he refuses them, and she says, what is going on? He tells her, and she says, well, I can't do anything about it. He says, you need to go see the king.
Right.
And she says, look, it's been 30 days. He hasn't asked for me. Anybody who goes in without being asked for is killed.
Right.
And he says these famous words in chapter 4, verse 14.
Yeah.
He says, for if you altogether hold your peace at this time, if you're quiet, then there will be an enlargement, deliverance arise from the Jews from another. In other words, God will have another plan, but you and your father's house will be destroyed. In other words, the descendants of Kish, Saul, will be taken care of. Everything's on the line.
Right.
What Saul was supposed to do earlier in destroying King Agag and the people who were against him, if he had done his job, this story would never have taken place. But because these two lines, God saw, they're always going to be at each other's throats, killing, trying to get, and God says, okay, here's the deal. And Mordecai says, look, if you don't, your line will disappear. And who knows whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this.
That's a powerful statement.
Oh, how do you know that this isn't what God wanted, right?
Yeah.
And those are the questions we kind of ask ourselves sometimes, like, okay, God, is this what you want?
Yeah.
Is this what it's supposed to be? How do I know I'm walking in the right way? Right?
Yeah.
At least those are the questions I ask myself.
And that's one of those phrases that has lasted through time.
Yes.
You know, for such a time as this. Yes, exactly.
Such a time as this.
Well, you're going to go someplace else in just a few moments, so I want to just take a moment here.
Sure.
Because between that statement, the request, and this is where the fingerprints come in, or the symbols, prayer and fasting, but now take us to her ability to make this next statement. So she hears the one, for such a time as this. So that's heavy. That's heavy.
Yeah.
You're here for a reason, and this is probably it.
This might be it.
Right.
If you have to give your life, you give your life. And what I find fascinating, we have no indication of the faith or religion of her attendants.
Yes.
Because they probably weren't Jewish. They didn't seem to know she was Jewish, right? She was given attendance by the chamberlain earlier. But she says, I will have all of them pray with me.
Yeah.
And to me, that is a power. There's so many things. Her personal life witness was so strong that she felt not just she could ask them, but they would do it with her. Like, okay, Esther, I don't necessarily understand your tradition, your faith, your whatever, but I know you.
Right. And
I will be here with you. And that camaraderie of humanity where we look back past ethnic division, where we look past political division, where we look past socioeconomic division, and we just say, you're a human in need, I'm a human in need, how can we band together, right? And she comes with a statement.
It's powerful. It's
She says, go gather together all the Jews and present in Shushan, fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days or night and day. I and my maidens will fast likewise, and so I will go unto the king, which is not according to law. She reminds him.
Yeah.
You know, right? It's not according to law. And if I perish, I perish. And the Hebrew word there has the idea of it's not just like I'll be killed. It's I will surrender my life. It's a self-surrender. It's the word in the parish is someone who's giving up, relinquishing. It's not like they're quitting. Like, I don't mean giving up, like giving, but they are saying, if this is what I must do, then I am willing to die for it. And it's a much more powerful. I mean, I think King James did a good job of translating. If I perish, I perish. But it sounds like, if they kill me, they kill me. But it's more than that. It's like, I realize what I'm doing, and I am at this point willing to take my life and hand it to somebody. I'm going to trust whatever comes.
It's really an ultimate gift of submission.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And you have these hallmarks in the Bible that I think we have to come down to. All through, I think the point, I don't think God is saying you have to, but He wants you to get to the point where Abraham says, my son, or you, I choose you. God can deliver us, but if He chooses not to, we will not bow down, King. As for this day, my house, we will serve the Lord. Elijah, how long are you halt between two opinions? Choose, right? Daniel, you can do whatever, King, throw me in, but my God can deliver. He will send His angel, right? Over and over in Scripture, and this is one God gets people to, this is what He's looking for. If I perish, I perish. And it's a hard one. I'm not saying I'm there, but the hallmarks of all the faith in the Bible is getting to the point where you would rather be faithful to God than live.
Yeah.
To cross God up as a friend would hurt you so bad that you're like, I'm not doing that.
Right.
But that's a non-negotiable. And when the people reach there, we all through the Bible, everyone, Job, if he slays me, I will still trust him. Every single major character we look at comes to the same point. And I'm pretty sure that's what God's got the stories for.
Well, and I think this is important to understand, too, the alliteration or the foreshadowing that is here, because we live in a generation that has Jesus.
Yes.
They're living in a generation before Jesus.
Yes.
And this is a picture of Jesus and His sacrifice. Yeah, because she's going to go, she's speaking on behalf of her people. Yeah. And that's what He does on the cross for all of us. And all the stories, all the major heroes, that pinnacle is a revelation of who He is, right? But those hallmarks of surrender are what God is looking for. And every single patriarch has one. Well, friends, I don't know where you're at, but such a time as this, maybe where God has called you to enact or interact with where He's placed you. And it's a powerful story. And we'll put the timeline up here. And things don't happen quickly.
No, and that's what I love, because Satan may be moving pieces, but God 5 years before is like, I'll get somebody in place. And He planned that from 4 years before with getting Vashti off. It's like everything and it's like when you get to that such a time as this, and you look back and you're like, it's been 10 years. How did God?
Right.
Because God's foresight is only revealed in our hindsight, and that's what we are supposed to learn, to trust Him for that. Yeah.
Doug and I always appreciate, Hannah, you spending time with us. We thank you so much for taking the time to just spend these moments with us. And once again, if you have any comments or any thoughts or any direction you'd like us to go, principal@montereybayacademy.org or Daniel Gregory, D. Gregory at montereybayacademy.org. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much. See ya.
See you. Bye.